In this stream today, I wanted to discuss which horror franchises are consistent and which ones I have nostalgia for. Those are very much two different things. Alien, Psycho, Goosebumps are franchises that I actually have nostalgia for. In the case of Alien, back when me and my parents lived in New York from September 2010 to late May 2018, I knew a guy who I hung out with for a time that had a DVD box set containing Alien, Aliens, Alien Free, and Alien Resurrection. I borrowed that box set from him. That's when I watched Alien from Ridley Scott and Aliens from James Cameron for the first time. I've actually rewatched Alien, Aliens, Alien Resurrection, and the first AVP movie recently. I've seen Alien Free, AVP Requiem, and Prometheus before, but I have not rewatched them anytime recently. I did actually see Alien Romulus in theaters with two friends of mine. I'm really glad I did. I enjoyed it. It has a few issues, but I think it did a really good job of going back to the aesthetic, feel, vibe, tone of those first two movies. I think Fede Alvarez was the right pick because what he does well really works well with the Alien franchise, slowly building up the tension, building up the suspense, building up the horror until things get really bad. In the case of Psycho, I've not only seen Psycho, Psycho 2, as well as the direct-to-video film Psycho for the Beginning, but also the TV show Bates Motel. I'm pretty sure that's 5 seasons long, so I've watched multiple seasons of Psycho television. It's not very many horror franchises where I've actually seen a TV show. In the case of Goosebumps, I remember back when I was in school, I would go to the library and see the Goosebumps books there. I feel like I probably read at least one of them. I actually have seen not only all the episodes of the original Goosebumps TV show from the 90s, the episodes are available on YouTube. They used to be on Netflix. Unfortunately, not all of them are anymore, but at least they are available for free. I also have seen the first season of the new Goosebumps TV show, which actually is on streaming. Specifically, it's on Disney Plus. Goosebumps is very much entry level horror where it's somewhat scary, but not too scary. Whereas something like Scream or Evil Dead is not intended to be entry level. Evil Dead, especially, can be pretty brutal. When you're looking at which horror franchises are actually consistent, well, it's pretty obvious that Scream and Evil Dead have been consistent. I don't think very many people would dispute that Scream and Evil Dead have been much more consistent than Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Child's Play. Now, I have actually seen the original Goosebumps movie from 2015. I really like that one. I think it does a good job of delivering what I would want from a Goosebumps movie. Then I thought Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween was disappointing. I didn't like it as much. Wasn't as interesting. It's pretty similar to the first film. Jack Black's character of R.L. Stine doesn't really have much screen time in the second film, which I thought was a big letdown. When you look at the Scream movies, the worst one is Scream 3. Horror sequels get much, much worse than Scream 3. I mean, you look at Jaws 4 The Revenge or Exorcist 2 Heretic, they literally make Scream 3 look like The Godfather. Wrong Turn 4 and 5 make Scream 3 look like Schindler's List. Because Scream 3 is a flawed movie, but still an enjoyable one. It's not unpleasant. Yeah, it's still pretty fun that not only is this one still meta and self-aware, but actually takes that to a whole new level, to be honest. Because in this case, the movie is about all these people that are in Hollywood making a movie called Stab that's inspired by the Scream movies. I think that's pretty hilarious. If you look at Jaws 4 The Revenge, that movie has nothing to offer. It's not fun. It has a central premise that obviously is utterly ludicrous about a shark that's seeking revenge. What? But the movie isn't even self-aware. It doesn't realize how stupid it actually is. So for some reason, it plays everything dead serious, which is not at all a good idea. And then you look at Wrong Turn 4 and 5. Ooh, yikes. These movies are not just flawed, they are flat out unpleasant because they're all about constant, unearned, nihilistic cruelty. It's all about punching the audience in the gut repeatedly. Like, hey, you thought there's hope? No, just kidding. You thought anyone was going to survive? No, just kidding. You thought people's choices matter? No, just kidding. That's not compelling. It's not satisfying when characters' choices don't matter, when you feel like they just die no matter what. It becomes predictable at a certain point when you go, well, I know what's going to happen here. It's going to be the worst possible outcome. Look at Exorcist II The Heretic. That's famous for being just a really bad sequel that totally does not understand what made the first film work. If you look at the Evil Dead movies, there's not one of them that is a disaster or a misfire. You have something like Evil Dead Rise, I think, has issues. The second half is definitely better than the first half. In the first half, they're trying to get you to care about the characters. You don't really care all that much. And the setup is not great, but once you get to this mother being possessed, suddenly it gets a lot better. Finds a way to be horrifying in a whole new way because now the person being possessed is, well, a mother. And then you look at the Sam Raimi Evil Dead films, even if they're not to your personal taste, personal preference, even if you're not as much into that combination of horror and comedy, you still have to admit they're well done. They're not like bad movies. I think that Evil Dead 2 and then Army of Darkness are better than the first Evil Dead because they embrace more than the first film did a combination of horror and comedy, especially in Army of Darkness, where you literally have Ash going back in time to the Middle Ages and him, all these people in a castle facing off against skeletons. And also because of the 80s practical horror, there's some comedy there. Or to put another way, it doesn't feel quite as real as some modern horror films that are more realistic because of the effects. They feel more like something that is anchored rather than Evil Dead, where if you watch them now, you're more likely to see the effects. You look at Friday the 13th, and really pretty much none of these movies are great. They succeed at delivering that basic slasher experience that fans expect when they go to see these movies on Halloween. They're not really for me, to be honest. I've seen 4 of them, and that's it. I enjoyed Freddy vs. Jason because at least that movie does deliver the dumb schlocky fun that I want from a movie like this that is inherently dumb. I think that Jason Takes Manhattan is a movie that has some fun if you can get past the fact they totally waste the premise. And Jason X, the one where Jason is in space, is a silly movie. You get Uber Jason in the last like 10, 15 minutes. To me, it's enjoyable because it is so weird, not because it's actually good. The problem for me of this franchise is a lot of the movies tend to be about teenagers go to Camp Crystal Lake in order to smoke or drink or do drugs or have sex, and then they get killed. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't find that very interesting. It makes the movies feel pretty cynical and mean-spirited. They have a whole bunch of unlikable characters. And I know the first Friday the 13th launched this franchise, but what I've heard about it makes it sound like this movie hasn't aged very well. It's not one of these classics that actually is great, that holds up well to the test of time. I mean, you have this reveal right at the end of the movie about who the killer is, and you couldn't possibly have predicted it beforehand because there are no clues at all, and it's pretty light on story, light on characters. And for me, the Friday the 13th franchise doesn't really have a character like Ripley or Sydney Sweeney playing Sydney Sweeney's character from the Scream. Yeah, Sydney is the name of the character from the Scream movies. I blanked there for a second. These other horror franchises have a character that you remember right away. I don't really think Friday the 13th has that. You look at the Halloween franchise, and obviously the original John Carpenter film is a classic for sure, but I think that it inherently isn't really a movie that's designed to have 12, 11 follow-ups. There isn't really enough lore set up there to actually lay a foundation for a whole lot of sequels. After the first film, I think basically everyone would agree there's been a lot of ups and downs. I mean, you have Halloween 2, which I think is a good follow up to the first film, but then you have Halloween Free Curse of Witch Town, which is a very bizarre movie because it shouldn't be in the Halloween franchise. It doesn't make sense because that movie has nothing to do with anything else in Halloween at all, totally detached. And then Halloween H2O is pretty well regarded, but then like Halloween Resurrections, a lot of people would agree that one is pretty flawed. And then you got Halloween 2018 that actually got positive reviews, but then Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends were pretty divisive, especially the third film in that trilogy, Halloween Ends. Some people really didn't like it, other people did like it. I've only seen Halloween 2018 when you look at this new trilogy. I have not seen Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends. I've watched now the original Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, then Halloween H2O. Now, when you're talking about which franchises are consistent, you also have to mention Quiet Place. Right now, you only have 3 movies, so it's not a lot, but Quiet Place Part 1, Part 2, and then Day 1 are all really good. There's not one of them that stands out as being a lot weaker than the others. You also have the Thing franchise, only 2 movies. The original Thing from John Carpenter is a classic, and then the Thing 2011, unfortunately, wasn't really received all that favorably, which is sad for me. I think it's a pretty underrated movie, to be honest, that really should be looked on more favorably than it actually is. It also have like Child's Play or the Omen franchises that haven't been as consistent. I mean, the original Omen from Richard Donner is obviously a classic. And I think Omen 2 is a decent follow-up to the original film, but then Omen Free, The Final Conflict, a lot of people would say pretty big disappointment. And the Omen remake is not one that interests me. A lot of people would say it's just not a very memorable film because it doesn't bring anything new to the table. It just feels like bar band cover the original film. It's not as good. And I actually really enjoyed the first Omen. I saw it in theaters in 2024, and I really appreciated the way that it tied in to the original film. And then you have something like Saw, which has not been very consistent at all. Pretty much everyone agrees with that. I mean, after you lose John Kramer, suddenly you focus much more on Hoffman, and it's pretty universally agreed that Hoffman, not a very interesting character. Focus on him didn't really do the franchise any favors. And then Saw 10 actually got good reviews. That one actually did a good job of delivering what fans want from a Saw film. I've now seen the first 3 along with Spiral from the Book of Saw, the spin-off, and then Saw 10. I enjoyed Spiral. And let's see, what other franchises are there? Well, I mean, you also have like Wrong Turn, Hostel, or Hellraiser. Those have not been too consistent. Oh, and that'll wrap things up for this stream here. I tried to quickly talk about that. Hi, everyone. I'll be going live again pretty soon.